Hi, and welcome to our webinar for CIC for Supply Chain Orchestration. My name is Dylan Lee, and I'm the Head of Product Marketing here at Cleo. And today, our keynote speaker and presenter is going to be Shane Hagan, a member of our Solutions Architect team. So why don't we jump in and cover a little bit of housekeeping at the top here. So just so everyone is aware, these sessions are recorded. If you have to drop early for whatever reason, we will share the recording with you sometime in the next week or so, as well as host this on Cleo.com for future rewatches. At any point in time during the presentation, we encourage you to use the question and answer function. All lines are muted, so if you want to participate or share a question either for myself or for Shane during the presentation, we will try to cover as many of those live on the session as time allows. So with that, let's get right into it. All right, little bit of a plug here. Coming up in just a couple weeks' time, we have our first major marquee customer event with Cleo Connect in Arlington, Texas on April 14th and April 15th. We're kicking things off with a networking lunch on Tuesday, and it also includes a stadium tour as well as a lot of networking opportunities, keynote speakers, mixing with folks within your industry, sharing problems, talking about solutions, and hearing how others are taking advantage of Cleo as well. So this is a great opportunity. If you don't have plans for that week, highly recommend you register now so you can save your spot, and we would love to see you there. Okay, now on to the topic for today. So the compliance gap, right? This is something that is an ever-present challenge for most people operating in the supply chain, especially those that are working directly with retailers as their customers. And what happens when there's a compliance gap is that there's a penalty, right? Whether these penalties come in direct costs, such as chargebacks or deductions, right? Retailers tend to punish suppliers that fall short of the commitments that drive supply chain performance and supply chain operations. Now, 97% of suppliers feel it more than just the direct impact. They're experiencing margin reduction. They're experiencing revenue leakage from not just the chargebacks, but also some of the indirect impacts. This could come in the way of order reductions. It could come in the way of warehouse inefficiencies. You could experience it because of the loss of opportunity to grow revenue and grow your relationship with your key customers. And so what our research and market research has shown is that the average supplier is losing at least $250,000 or more per year. And oftentimes that number will scale based on the size of your company. So while individual penalties might be only $100 each, at scale and over time, this can equate to millions and millions of dollars in lost revenue on an annual basis. Okay, now apart from just the compliance gap and the penalties that occur from that, there are things that amplify these challenges, right? Issues with technology, having fragmented systems, ERP, WMS, TMS, retail portals, even relying on spreadsheets to do business with certain partners. These things create gaps and white space in processes that really need to be orchestrated and seamless from an end-to-end perspective. Now, having visibility across these processes, or even where having EDI and automation in place, but not really having the ability to add business level context at the supply chain operations level can really hamper your ability to identify and react quickly to these compliance gaps. Further, when you jump over to the ecosystem side of the business, pretty much every retailer has their own definitions of SLAs, of perfect performance, of expectations that drive the way that you're supposed to be performing with them when you're doing business, right? So just think about orders of different types. It changes whether you're delivering shelf-stable goods or perishable goods, whether you're shipping directly to a store or a distribution center, or if you're a drop ship supplier, right? Again, different expectations against different retailer customers, and again, changing one layer deeper based on the pattern of those distribution and sales processes. Now, the business process itself shouldn't be ignored, right? Think about the way that your teams are reconciling data between systems and partners, right? Instead of focusing on performance, you're really left focusing on the technical side of how you're doing business, right? Instead of the relationship. This is, added to when you have processes that are siloed, and that can kind of cripple you because those siloed processes are really, really difficult to scale. And then you end up with compliance gaps, chargebacks, and deductions where dispute management ends up as a permanent cost center in your business, right? You're funding revenue recovery instead of loss prevention, right? And so one of the key things to think about is how are you identifying risk quickly enough to actually act on it? And that takes us to my final slide before I hand it over to Shane. All right, so what's the strategic approach to help solve these compliance gaps, to prevent disruptions, reduce risks, avoid chargebacks, and stop them before they can even occur, right? Well, there's kind of a four kind of level way of thinking about it. One is how you connect and digitalize, right? So you have to start by like, how am I connecting and integrating these systems? Am I able to seamlessly manage both EDI and API business? And how am I managing the kind of technical sides of my transactions between my trading partners and those internal systems as well? What level of automation and streamlining of these digital business processes am I capable of? Are they orchestrated? Am I really, really strong with, let's say, procurement, but have gaps on the order to cash side or in my logistics world, right? So one of the ways to think about this is bringing all of your different business patterns from a supply chain perspective together to increase that level of control that you're able to get. And then the last two, this is really where you're going from that kind of like technical level of integration into how you can control and improve supply chain business processes, right? Do you have the real-time visibility and insight, not just in terms of what's happening at the EDI level, but at the business level? Are you able to shift from like reactive tracking, finding out about things too late in the process, to more proactive awareness where you have time to act and informed decision making in your teams and also at the executive level? And finally, how are you able to drive that proactive response to these operational events? That means you have the ability to stop some of these penalties, to stop the compliance gap before they manifest in these revenue hits, chargebacks, and deductions. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Shane to take us into the demo part. So over to you, Shane.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. So before I jump straight into the platform, I do want to cover one more slide that just gives some context into the different layers that Dylan's been talking about here, right? Because there is a technology layer that I just want everybody to understand from a high level so that we can show you how we layer on these other prediction and analytic like tools so that your team has some of this insight into your supply chain processes. So really quickly, I'll cover this from a high level here. It is the Cleo platform architecture. So ultimately, Cleo is an end-to-end integration solution to integrate your supply chain ecosystem with your internal applications. So on the right-hand side, we see your business partners, whether these are your customers, your suppliers, your third-party logistics providers, whoever you might be doing EDI or B2B transactions with. We connect to them however they want to be connected to, and we start moving data from their B2B application to our internal systems or your internal systems, right? Whether this is your ERP, your TMS, WMS, or any other application that you want this data fed into or feeding data out of. So we establish end-to-end integration there with our integration engine. It's capable of really any sort of communication protocol that we're going to need to support, whether that's API, database, file-based integrations. And then, of course, for our EDI partners, AS2 and SFTP protocols to get those integrations rolling on their side. So because Cleo is doing this end-to-end integration and we're moving all of these different transactions, we have context to build this layer of orchestration that Dylan's talking about. So in our CIC cockpit that sits on top of these integration processes here, this is where we drive these business insights so that your team sees exactly what's going on, right? What is being passed back and forth. And if the things aren't happening that should be happening, and then gather all of that information over time, build scorecards, build predictive analysis, and proactive alerting so that your team stays in the know and can react, or rather proactively respond to things rather than react to things. So that's what I'm going to show everyone on the webinar here today is the CIC cockpit. I'll give you a quick tour with a highlight over some of these orchestration features that the platform features. So let me quickly swap my screen share here. And we will go into the CIC cockpit. Dylan, can you give me a thumbs up that this looks good? Cool. So we are looking at the CIC cockpit here, and I'm logged into the main dashboard, your kind of overall dashboard for the health of your supply chain integrations. And right off the bat, we see some of the scorecarding and analysis that Cleo's doing with your partner relationships. So I'm seeing here some of my retailer statistics for how I'm performing with my customer integrations and my customer partners. We see our on-time order acknowledgement, shipment, and invoice performance over time. We see a breakout of any of those SLAs that we might have missed, what we've met, what the percentage is, and then any statistics here for late acknowledgments or late invoices that we have with these partners. And we have a high-level scorecard in here that we can absolutely drill into, which I'll show you in a second, on how these scorecards are getting made up, where the specific problems are happening so that we can potentially address those. So these are some of the scorecards, right, that we're putting together here. While these things are happening, right, if something is late or might be late, we are sending you proactive alerts. So your team doesn't have to refresh this dashboard and check to make sure everything's healthy. We're sending proactive alerts so your team can respond to things if something is going wrong. But this is where we build that performance over time. You can have other charts in here for things like your volume of different document types that you're doing with your partners. I selected a few down here of the common documents that we do with our customers or our retailers. So we see some trends in volume with those specific document types down here. So just to, and I like to start at really a more basic level of visibility and then kind of grow it out to the overall health of the platform. So I do want to show everyone what message level visibility looks like for, say, a purchase order, right? So I'll open up our purchase order chart here. And what we're seeing is a table view of all of the purchase orders that have come in. And I'm noticing now I have some columns here that I wanted to unselect. So in this table, you can actually select data out of these documents to show in the table view, right? So we are pulling key information out of each of these document types, and you can actually surface those here so you see those at a quick glance. And so what I'm going to do, I had some properties here that I selected for more logistics use cases, but I could come in here and say select a purchase order number property and surface that in my, oh, and turns out it's a blank one here. I have a couple different purchase order numbers in my demo environment here. But all that to say, you can customize the look and feel of this table per user, right? So whatever information is important to that user, you select that here and it shows up in a quick and easy way. You can do additional filtering on the left-hand side, whether it's filtering by the partner that it's coming from, if it has any issues, if there's any potential SLA risks that we're monitoring on. So this is kind of a callback to what I was talking about earlier, where we can proactively alert you if something might be going wrong, if something might hit a late SLA status, or if something has gone wrong, right? So we have issue flags that we will set if something failed at the technology level, whether it was an issue transaction with a transaction or an integration with your application. And then these SLA tags here can notify us if a response to one of these transactions is at risk, right? Maybe we haven't sent our ASN or our invoice for a particular order, and we want to proactively alert you on that. You can also filter by the acknowledgement status. You can add additional message types to your filter here. You can also filter by the properties that I was showing earlier in the table view, right? So anything that we're surfacing in the cockpit here is something that you can search on. So I want to dive one layer deeper and select one of these orders, and I'll pick this one up here from Home Depot. And what we'll see is a few different things. First of all, in the middle here is a high-level look at the purchase order. So we see those key fields that we're surfacing out of this document type. We also see the flags at the top here that let us know we met SLAs for this particular partner, right? Our response time on the order acknowledgement and our response time on the ship notice. You can also pull open the more technical details if you'd like to see the raw data that is in here. If you'd like to see the result of the transformation process, that is also in here. And then the message lifecycle at the bottom will also show you the end-to-end integration process that our engine executed. So you can see exactly what happened at each stage of the integration, from the connection with the partner, the integration and transformation that our engine ran, and ultimately the integration with your ERP or system of record. I do want to point out there is another view for these documents in the cockpit here. So you can select this overview option. And what this does is uses some AI to format the entire document for us so we see it in a human readable format. And so sometimes it takes a second here for my demo instance to warm up and generate it for me. But in a second here, we will see that entire purchase order with all of the line items, all of the party information, all of the header information on that document. So we can see this here, all of that information from that purchase order. And we can even download this and save this locally or have an automated workflow where this automatically gets sent out as part of the integration process to folks at the organization. So that's the message level visibility. I'm sure we've noticed on the left-hand side, there's a transaction chain here. So this is some of the context that Cleo drives as we are moving transactions back and forth. We will chain together related transactions. So we're seeing here our order acknowledgement, and I'll just use the simple view for these. We see our order acknowledgement, we see our shipment notice, and we see our invoice all chained together here. I know this is a pretty straightforward use case using kind of the core documents with a retailer. If you do other types of transactions, whether it's maybe an order change process or you have an order that goes out over multiple shipments, maybe you receive a remittance back, whatever transactions might have happened in your conversation with a partner, we're going to capture that and chain that together here for you as well. So this is some of the business process context that Cleo is driving. We're kind of going up layers as we go through the platform here. So I want to jump back to my messages tab and talk about one more thing at the message level. So I talked earlier about all of the different filtering and the fields that you can add to these tables. You can build your own custom filters for really anything. And let's say I want to build a filter here for all of my orders from Home Depot. So I can add Home Depot here. I now have a filter that shows me all of those Home Depot orders. I can save that filter at the top left-hand side here, call it Home Depot orders. And now this is a repeatable filter that I can use to quickly select when I log into the cockpit. You can also use that filter to send out automated reports to folks at your organization. So in the scheduled reports here, we can see some other examples of reports that we've built, whether it's inbound orders from particular customers. We can also filter by those SLA statuses to collect any transaction that might have at-risk SLAs and put that into a consolidated report. Any late shipments, right? So any of those flags and statuses that we saw back on the message tab, we can capture that and filter through those and send those out automatically in these scheduled reports here. So one other thing I like to cover in these cockpit overviews is the troubleshooting, right? We want to enable folks to have the level of visibility that they need when, they just want to check on the health of their environment. And that's what a lot of the orchestration capability is for. But also, it's super important to know when things go wrong and when things might be going wrong. And one of the places you will handle those is in the issues tab here. So when failures happen in the Clio environment, we will create a ticket for that issue. And that ticket shows up here, and it gives us some high-level information on the category of that issue. We have several issue categories, and we'll automatically categorize your issues using these flags down here. We will say what the impact is, so where it failed and how many jobs or messages were impacted. So in this case, with this mapping failure here, we actually have 536 purchase orders that are impacted by this same failure. So the platform has automatically grouped those transactions together for us. And when I open up that ticket, it has some more AI layered in here to let us know in human readable terms, not EDI terms, right? What has gone wrong in the processing of this transaction. And in this case, it turns out the partner is sending us values that we're not expecting. So our process doesn't know how to handle those values, right? So we get that summary at the top for us. We also see the more technical details from the process itself reporting what has gone wrong. So we can jump to the resolution and recovery tab at the top and use the AI issue assistance to identify a root cause. So it lets us know what has gone wrong. And it actually recommends fix options for us. So we can do a number of things here. We could update our mapping rules to work with that value that the partner is sending us that we're not expecting. We could notify the partner if we're in a relationship with a partner where they would correct things. That's not always the case, but could be an option. And you can also notify your team, right? If we need to do some manual correction of documents, that's always an option as well. But best practice is usually to fix something once so that the next time it happens, it doesn't break things again. So we would probably update our map here, and we could expand this, and it would give us a step-by-step look at how to fix this issue. Once we deploy this mapping change, we can actually come down to the bottom here and see all of our messages that are impacted by this issue. And now that that mapping change is in place, we can select all of those messages and reprocess them through that now updated mapping. So as long as everything else is okay with this transaction, there's no other issues that we haven't discovered yet, those documents will be reprocessed and successfully sent into our ERP system. The last thing I'll point out here is the discussion tab. So there is a way to collaborate in the platform with your other users at your organization. Clio can be a full self-service platform where you can own the day-to-day monitoring and troubleshooting within your own team. You can also rely on Clio's managed services teams. So we have teams that we can dedicate to monitoring your environment 24/7 by 365. And they will have a 1 hour response time for any issues that pop up in your environment, and they'll start working on fixing those on your behalf. And this is where you would see any updates from that managed services team on this particular ticket. So it gives you a single place to collaborate and fix issues without having to open up an email thread or jump to another ticketing system. It's all built into the Clio platform here. So I have about 5 minutes, and I do want to make sure we touch on that scorecarding and the early warning system just a little bit more before we open it up for questions. So like I mentioned earlier, right, we are continuously monitoring for the SLA status on your transactions with your partners, right? And partners might have unique SLAs. So we can set those SLAs at the partner level, but in a lot of cases, the partner actually provides the SLA in the transaction itself. They say, hey, you need to acknowledge this order by a certain time, or you need to ship this order by a certain time. We will proactively pull that value or pull those dates out of those transactions and start monitoring on those instead of having to set up unique SLAs for each partners manually. So there's a couple different ways that the logic under the scenes happens, but a lot of the time it can be automatically introduced with the data that the partners are sending us. So over time, what we'll do is, of course, alert if things are going wrong or if things are potentially going to be late. And then we will build scorecards on your performance with these various metrics. So we can see here some quick examples with my retailers on our performance with on-time order acknowledgement. We see our performance over time here. We can see what retailers we might potentially have issues with, like this one here with Chewy.com. We've missed 34% of our on-time order acknowledgement SLA with them. There might be potential financial risk there with chargebacks. And we can actually open this up and see this performance over time and the specific transactions that are causing these issues. So I know we have about 3 minutes left here, and I want to make sure we cover any questions that may have come in.
Yep.
Dylan, are we seeing any questions?
So far, we've got a couple. Any that we don't have time to cover live here, we'll make sure we try to follow up with you offline. If you want that to happen, just make sure you don't submit it as an anonymous person. Otherwise, we won't know who to reach out to. So the first question we got is, why is end-to-end visibility critical in preventing chargebacks and delays? I think this might go back to something that I had mentioned at the top here. So I'll take a shot at the start here, Shane, and then invite you to kind of add to anything, right? So a lot of what like Shane showed in the demo is really about the contextual linking between steps in an end-to-end business process, right? So if you think about traditional integration, you're really thinking about like a transaction in isolation. Like, hey, was my order response successful? Instead of, was my order response in time that meets the business requirement of my customer? Another example of that is like the ASN, which is kind of like the backbone of communication with your trading partner between the shipment and receiving, right? And if that doesn't go out on time, there's all kinds of like issues that get created at the operational level, right? Your customer relies on that for warehouse planning, for receiving, for like having the shelf space ready to like organize the number of inbound trucks so that their receiving and their dock space is flowing seamlessly, and you don't end up with like a bunch of trucks idling in line at the edge of the distribution center. So the key parts here are not just one document successful or failing in isolation, but is it successful within a set business process that meets the demands of your customers' trading partner requirements? And that's kind of the key of preventing chargebacks, of ensuring that you have the ability to close the compliance gap. And that really involves some of the stuff that Shane was talking about at the supply chain orchestration level is how linked from end to end is that business process? How much insight do you have at those individual events that are closely related to what happened before and what needs to happen next? And so, Shane, anything else to add there from what happens inside CIC and how we kind of capture those?
No, I think you covered it perfectly. We're in a unique position where we see all of this data and we're taking advantage of that by driving the context and letting you orchestrate this process or these processes end to end.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like we're out of time. I'll just say, teasing a future, a get together between Shane and I. We'll be back probably in the next month or so, hopefully. Keep an eye out for an email, another invite for one of these where we will showcase some of the upcoming capabilities that we're releasing in the next month. So with that, thank you, Shane. Thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.